The first step in empowerment is, who knows what the first step is? The clue is you've all accomplished it. What is the first step?
Attending.
Attending, showing up. Yay. So, yay.
I think it's caring about it.
Caring comes before that. That's cool.
Yeah. I wouldn't attend if I didn't care.
That's good. That is very good. Good. So we had 45 pre-registrants. So you're all community organizers. You might as well learn this fact. JCAN has been running on 50% show up. That's 50% of people who pre-register to a Zoom show up in person. Right now we're running under 50%, but that will increase. My guess is in the next few minutes. Maybe we'll get back up to 50%, maybe not. Thea, thank you so much for doing all the great publicity on this. And thanks everyone for your patience if you've received multiple appeals to be here. Again, pat yourselves on the back. You've got a good step along the way. Thea, do you have something to start us out with?
We are the Jewish Climate Action Network, and we do rely on donations in order to keep us going. We are an all-volunteer program. We are fiscally sponsored by the Social Good Fund, so any money donated to us is part of a 501c3. And we welcome any kind of donations that you could help us to keep this going in order so that we can do these workshops and all the others. We do about 30 workshops, webinars during the year, plus classes, plus letting the Jewish community know what's happening in the climate arena. So any donations are most helpful. Thank you so much.
Thea, thank you so much. And Thea is key person in the organization that keeps everything running, and we are mostly a volunteer organization. And Janet Green will be here. Janet, are you here already? Janet is our staff person, and thank you very much. Hey, Janet, glad you're here. Thanks everybody for being here. Here's my email. You'll see it again later. Hopefully you'll want to be in touch. As Thea just said, we have about 30 programs a year. And amongst them are what we call this cycle of 3 decarbonization workshops. A cycle of 3. We're in the one on the left right now. This one that you're going to be trained in today is how to run a decarbonizers program for your congregants, for the households that are in your community. The other 2, just to let you know, one is benchmarking, calculating a carbon footprint for your synagogue. And by the way, there's folks here that are representing synagogues, churches, and towns and communities, or other organizations. All these work for all the above. We also run a workshop on establishing a climate plan. We used to say, whatever climate goals you come up with are great. Then we said 7 years, and then we said 6 years. Oh, that's supposed to be the other way, crossing out the 7, 6 years, and now 5. Why? Because 2029 is a critical year, both in the Jewish calendar and in our secular calendar, and for climate goals all over the world. All right, so we're on this program to the left. And right away, what's the decarbonizer? I want folks to come off the mute. And if you haven't seen this question before, what's PV? Anybody know? This is participatory here, so please speak up.
Photovoltaic.
Nice. Oh, okay. And actually, I have this slide should have come before. Welcome to all. This is a training in community organizing. How you define community is up to you. This program has been shown to work equally well and very well in all types of communities, synagogues and churches and municipalities. If you call it a community, it will work. Okay, so please, when you're done, please go forth and implement and let us know how it goes in your community. So yes, back to what is a decarbonizer? Someone who has adopted for their household photovoltaic, solar electricity, typically on a rooftop. Who knows what EV is? EV.
Electric vehicle.
Nice. Who knows what HP stands for here?
Heat pump.
Nice. All right, we're moving right along here. Critical thing about this program is, for this purpose, a decarbonizer is a non-expert, someone who's not a professional, someone who doesn't speak about this all the time as an expert. Okay? That's critical, and you'll see why in a second. Non-experts is who we're looking for. And why these three measures? Why these three measures? Because these are the three most impactful household measures by far. Now, there's a qualification there, but by far, and it depends on your a few things to make sure that's the case. So here's the way to think about it. The target households in your community would be those households where someone at least is driving an automobile. Your target households are more likely if it's single family detached, and more likely if and I should say candidates also if they have available roof. Now, one may be a household is a good target if they're one of these three. That's fine. This is target for who should be attending your program. Now, if your community has none of those three, or very, very few of those three, then this program is not for you. And so, just as a thought exercise, what type of community would not have households in it, or many households in it, that fit at least one of those three? What type of community would this program not be geared for?
The
Anybody want-
low-income renters.
Low income, possibly. Renters, likely, because
They can't control.
Pardon?
They wouldn't have a heat pump. They would, photovoltaics. They can't control all that because they're renters.
good point. Very good point about control. It's actually also because the more dense the housing, the more that walls are shared, the larger a multifamily building might be, the lower the carbon footprint of that household. Very good. Okay. So what tends to happen is that even if in cities where there's a lot more multifamily, at least there's some people who are living in detached housing, and at least some are drivers. But it could be that most people are not. Most people are commuters. And what do we say about those folks? If there's not, let's see at the bottom, if there's not a sizable number in your community, then that's a small carbon footprint. Yasher koach, and that's a Jewish phrase meaning way to go. Okay? So that's good. I just want to make sure people have that in their heads. Unfortunately, carbon is not a democratic thing. Not everyone is equal. And we're going to get into that later. All right. So that's just the precursor. So let's go to, are you a decarbonizer? So let's just do a show of hands. I don't know if Thea, you can catch at least a few people, make a notation if you don't mind. We've got 21 participants. Thanks everybody for participating. Who has photovoltaics already? And you can raise your hand either by hand or by electronically. Keep your hand up for just a moment if you don't mind. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 21. Great. Okay. And Thea, did you make note of a couple people at least?
I only saw 4. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's good. And who, if you don't mind raising your hands again, who already drives electric? I see 1.
Hybrid halfway.
Ken, is it a plug-in?
Yes.
Yes, that's good. That's the right kind of hybrid. That's
We
good.
just have a regular hybrid.
All right, which is not electric, Janet, that's good. Okay, great. And then last one, who already has heat pump heating?
Wow.
Okay, that is a big number. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up, please. Keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least. 6. Wicked cool, wicked cool. And I would venture to say that 3 or 4 years ago, we were doing these programs, we would not have that number of hands up, even amongst us climate activists. Cool. All right, thank you. Okay, so now we've established what is a decarbonizer, and there are quite a few amongst us here.
How
Okay.
many have heat pumps?
Yeah, there were at least 6 hands, I thought. Very cool. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Now, who are these people? These are the people in your community. Okay, I'm calling them people in your synagogue, but it can be in your church, it can be in your town. Okay, all of this is equally applicable to any kind of community. And I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but some people came in late. I want to make sure they hear that. All right. These are people in your community. And why do you care? You want them to be decarbonizing. And the big question, and the reason you're here, is because you want to effect change. You want to see change. You'd like to help bring it about. And that we're going to show you a different way to do it than usual. Most ways are top-down approaches. Anybody want to give an example of what I might be meaning when I say a top-down approach to change? What's a top-down approach?
IRA.
Okay, that's interesting. A top-down approach. So think of it from the participants, the households. How would they come to the point of making a change? What would cause them to do that?
Regulations.
Regulations. Well, like a regulation that would force them, that's possible. Where they have no choice, that's possible. What else if they are making a choice?
Financial incentives.
Financial incentives will encourage. It doesn't force anybody, but it tends to increase the numbers. At least that's the concept, and it's a good one. Right. So what I'm saying here, though, is top-down approach would be an expert. Right? Many of us go to expertise. We value expertise when we want to, if we want to learn, or when we learn something. Right? We hear from somebody who knows what they're talking about, and it makes sense. Or we go to a book, or we read it in a newspaper. Okay? Or we go to a webinar, whatever. But these are, I consider them top-down approaches. And the first people to make changes have to be learning from top down. Top down. We're at a stage of change, a transition, where we can and we must talk about a different way. And top down, I'm pointing from top to down, bottom. This is side to side, peer to peer, one to another. And you're going to see how to make it happen. And the big clue here is that some folks, as we just ascertained in this group, some folks have already decarbonized. Now, if you haven't decarbonized yet, that's perfectly fine. And we'll come back and see the members of the households after we're all done with the training. This is an adoption curve. People have seen this kind of a curve before, and it's how any technology is adopted when it's eventually adopted. Where we are right, and yes, and eventually everyone will decarbonize. And how do we know that? Faith. This is what we call it. This is why we sometimes call this faith-based communities. Okay. In other settings, I can't get by with just that one word, but for now, I'm doing that. All right, but until we get there, we don't know the time scale. We don't know when we've gotten to. We do know, by the way, we're pretty much past that earliest stage of 2.5%. We are probably in here now. Oh, wait, no, I've been doing this for a few years. We're actually, watch carefully, here. Okay, that's where we was. This is where we are. And you can see where we have to get to. And what's happening to the curve? It's getting more steep. More steep means acceleration. It is happening, and no one knows that it's happening fast enough, which is why we want to promote this program. Eventually, you and everyone fall into these categories. Hopefully, we'll get more people in the earlier categories sooner. Yes, go ahead.
I'm just thinking that there are goals being set. For example, in Michigan, it's 2030 or 2040 that you reach a certain goal for decarbonization. So it's kind of they're tied together, so it's
Exactly, exactly. And that's why I said 2029 is a critical year. I said that earlier. Now, here's the big clue. When we read about such things as Michigan setting a goal for the whole state, okay, and we've heard about that at many levels. Here's the big clue for us as community organizers. Unless we get to, who was it, John, who brought up regulations could force change? I think John mentioned that. Somebody mentioned that. It is
Yes.
possible. It is possible. But in the meantime, they encourage, hopefully, they encourage change, and we encourage change. And guess what? Change is incremental. Incremental. It's nice that the experts, wherever we hear about it, talk about the change, global, large change, universal change. But the reality is, it is happening in our society one at a time. We must help accelerate it. And if not you who showed up today, who's going to do it? All right. So if you haven't yet, please put after your name, rename yourself with your affiliation. Some folks are with synagogues, some churches, some municipalities, some organizations, whichever it is, that's great. All right. And I don't know if anybody here knows Maria, but we're going to hear from her for the next 2 minutes. So you're not just listening to my voice.
My name is Maria Axner. I'm a member of Temple B'nai B'rith in Somerville, Massachusetts. I organized and led a decarbonizing webinar program for the members of my synagogue about 2 months ago. I had attended Fred Davis's program about this, the same one that you're attending this afternoon. I followed his plan on how to organize it and present it, and I was delighted and somewhat surprised at how well it went. The idea was that 3 congregants talk about their experiences with transitioning away from fossil fuel. 1 from gas to heat pump, 1 from the electric grid to solar, and 1 from a combustion engine car to an EV. At first, I wasn't even sure if it would have been a better way to start to have experts on this topic speak about heat pumps, solar, and EVs. But I followed Fred's advice about hearing from peers first. The members loved hearing about each other's experiences in transitioning away from fossil fuels. There was a lot of animated discussion, questions, and some laughter. In preparing for the webinar, the idea was to interview many people who had transitioned to solar, heat pumps, and EVs in my synagogue, and see who in each category would make a good speaker. I thought that would be so much work, but I got other people in my synagogue to help me with that. So it wasn't so much work, and it was fun to work with others. As I said before, people really enjoyed the evening, and I think it encouraged some people to move ahead with their plans to decarbonize.
Okay, Maria just gave you the rundown in 2 minutes, and now you're going to hear the recipe. At this moment, you're thinking you're being asked to put on a program. How are you going to do that? And often the question of permission comes up. Permission, like, am I allowed? Who do I have to ask? How am I going to get this to happen? Now let's just do a quick show of hands. How many people don't need anybody's permission to put on a program in your community? In 2 months, you know how to put it on the calendar. Raise your hand if you're at that stage in your community. Keep your hand up. That's a couple of people are already there. Cool. Okay. How many people know who to ask? Raise your hand, please. Cool. Okay. And I'm going to presume that everyone else knows somebody to ask who would know somebody to ask. But in any case, we can help you here. And we've put this together, and you don't have to read through it all. But this is the permission slip. The permission slip. So we have some text for you to copy and paste, and I'll put it in the chat in a second here. And this would give you the request to take to the powers that be and say why we really, really, really should do this in our community. So And this is a good time to remind you, please do take out your pen and paper. We're going to launch into the recipe right now. So there are 9 points on the recipe. I will also repeat the recipe. But it's good to work with the team. You are the organizers. You're going to find 3 decarbonizers. See how we just found a pool? You're going to see how to do that in a second. And your audience, critical audience, those people in, the cartoon characters at the beginning, those are your community members. And where you have it, this is the who and the where and the how. Where you have it, it's up to you. In person is great. Zoom is also great. And how, that's the critical part. It's peer-to-peer. Okay, it's a recipe. There's 9 steps. And we'll minimize the chat, but if there's any glaring questions, please shout them out. Okay, first, calendar. Yes, first things first, get a date. Put it on the calendar. Give yourselves 2 months. You don't need more than 2 months. 6 weeks might be fine. But why do you need 2 months? It's not for all the work that goes into the program. It's to make sure you have a lot of people showing up. So you want to publicize, publicize, publicize. And literally, I said it 3 times, but make it 7. When people are asked to do something 7 times, those that for whom it's a good thing to do, that's going to increase the chances that they'll show up. So don't be afraid to repeat. If you get a couple of people saying, you know what, you've been hectoring me, you've been nudging me, I got it already, then you've done enough publicity, right? But until you get to that point, until somebody is bothered, you haven't necessarily gotten enough publicity out there. That is wicked important, to publicize, publicize, publicize. Okay, and so you want to start with, put it on your calendar today, even though you have nothing fleshed out whatsoever, just make it up. We're going to have a program on climate. As soon as you have the date, say, put this down. Okay, do that tomorrow. And then, let's say you're going to put it on 2 months from now, in March 7th or whatever. You put out 3 emails March 6th and 7th saying, don't forget, show up, show up. Okay, anyway, that's the most important part of this training. And if you've got that, that's great. Now, the core. First, fetch. Number 3 is fetch. We already just did that. We asked folks, did they already decarbonize? Are you already a decarbonizer? And we were looking for a pool of people. Notice that we just asked for show of hands, and maybe Thea jotted them down. Of course, if you're doing this, you want to go a little slower and make sure you jot all the names down. And all you're doing right now is just finding out who has done these things. And as you're asking, you will hear preliminary stories. As you're asking around, you will hear preliminary stories, and you want to listen carefully. You want to listen carefully. Now, in that, and what you're doing here, here's my little graphics here. So you're looking for someone who drives an electric car, someone who heats with the heat pump, and someone who has photovoltaics. So you're fetching. You're at the fetching stage. You want to stay open. You're not limiting yourself. You're not committing yourself. You're just asking. And if you don't know anybody in your community, well, if you don't know anybody in your community, that's another thing. But if you don't know anybody who's got any of those 3, that's fine. Go to the rabbi or the pastor or the rector or whoever. Go to your board of directors. Go to your friends. Just ask around. If you don't already have a green team, by the way, if you have a green team, you should be assigning all of them to do all of this. The fetching stage, you want to get word out to as many people. And as you're going, you want to be saying, we're putting on a program, and hopefully you have a date, March 7th. Hope you can be there. You're not committing that they're the speaker. You will be finding 3 speakers, but right now you're just fetching about. I'm on the green team. I heard you had solar. We're hoping to spread the word. How long have you had them? Do you like them? Okay, just ask, open-ended questions. You're not looking for a big conversation at this point. They might talk for 5 minutes. They might talk for 20 minutes. But you're looking to hear, are they talkative? Are they enthused? And take notes as you go. Was there a question? I'm sorry. Thought I heard somebody. Any questions so far? This is the critical stage of the organizing.
Oh, but on number one, I just want to say, because I was on the green team, am on the green team, Temple B'nai B'rith, work with Maria on the program. And we asked permission, if you want to say that, with the board. Of course, they were very willing. And we had to work it out with the board and the rabbi regarding the date, so it didn't conflict with any other programs. I just wanted to make that clear, that you want to think about that, and because we're an active synagogue, and so I just wanted to mention that.
Very good point.
How we
Thanks.
did it.
No, that's great. Thanks, Janet, for bringing that up. How many people have done any kind of organizing so date conflicts, date resolution is something to have a little familiarity with? Again, show of hands. You've done some organizing. You've been involved in. Okay, cool. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, Janet, because it's kind of integral. Is that the right word? It goes along with the job of community organizing. Yes. Okay, good. So fetching. Any other questions about the fetching stage here? Fetching about. Are you looking for people who are fetching? Maybe. Okay. So you want to see if they're talkative? You want to see if they're enthused? Yes. Sheila, did you have a question?
The question I have is, if you have and I just want you to know I'm from Temple Reim in Newton. So my concern is that there may not be people who, I can find within the synagogue who would be already doing this or knowledgeable, or I don't know how to access people who would already be decarbonized.
Oh, great question. And how many people here know Temple Reim? How many people think that Sheila is likely to find decarbonizers in that community?
They hosted our 2019 conference. So
we have high confidence, Sheila. You will succeed if you start. The hardest part is starting, and just start to ask around. Send an email to the rabbi, send to the assistant rabbi, to the there are already there. It's a social action committee. Is there a social action committee?
Oh, I'm on the social action committee.
Bingo.
We are the social. It's very small.
Ask everybody there if they know anybody.
Okay, we'll start.
That's community organizing. It's spread.
Yes.
The quicker you spread it out,
we have a very low attendance rate on such subjects, so that's my concern. But maybe we could talk about that some other time off camera.
I look forward to it. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Joe.
but thanks for bringing that up. I really appreciate that. Okay, good.
Thanks for troubleshooting.
And Danny gives a great testimonial, and we'll come back to her if we have time afterwards. All right. So we've gone through 1, 2, and 3. Next, there's still more steps here, and they're very particular. What I mean by particular is that once you've gotten to the point of having a pool, and you might have more than 3, you hopefully will have more than 3. Okay, now you can do this in committee, or you can do it just by yourself. You get to be the judge. As I said before, carbon is not democratic. It's not fair. Not everybody is equally has an same carbon footprint, and you also are not being fair. You will have to be the judge. You are now the producer of a show, and that can be fun and empowering, and it can be scary, but you'll do fine. All you got to do is discriminate amongst your candidates, amongst your pool, and pick one of each, right? And how do you discriminate? Well, you set up your own criteria. You don't have to use the ones I have here, but you might pick who's most personable, who is already popular in the community, who is relatable, who is entertaining, who is fetching. That's up to you. But anyway, make up your own criteria, but you're putting together a program and you want it to work. Right? So it doesn't all have to be positive. I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna here, but I'm saying that you should be discriminating and don't worry about it. You might disappoint somebody if they wanted to be the center of attention. You might have to say thanks, but no thanks. That's okay. What you want to say to those people is actually to everyone in your pool, thanks so much. So glad you did the decarbonizing. Really, really, really want you and everyone you know to show up at the program, and we want you there so you can help with all the Q&A. There will be Q&A. All right. Any questions here about discriminating?
Well, we had the 3 people, but then other people could tell their stories in little
Exactly.
pieces.
Exactly. It
How we
happens.
did it.
Exactly. All right. Now you've got the 3. You've got the 3. You've done the discriminating work. Now you go back to the 3. You've already listened to their first few minutes, and now you want to ask them to tell you their stories, tell more of their stories. Okay. Not their life stories, but their stories relating to their decarbonizing. And you should ask softball questions, open-ended questions, just to get them to talk. What was your motivation? Did you have any issues with the EV? Does the rest of the family like the heat pump heating? Whatever it is, whatever your questions are, and get them to talk. And by the way, if they won't talk, then you're all set. You go back to your pool, you find somebody else. You want people who are okay talking. And between your initial interview and this interview, likely you can go up to around 40 minutes. If they're real talkers, they'll take more. You'll start hearing repetition. And that's good. That's good. That means you don't have to keep talking to them if they're starting to repeat the stories. But take the notes as you go, because that's super important to the next step. Any questions about this, the interviewing step? Again, you can divide this up in a team. Okay, good. So about 40 minutes typically times 3. That's the total you might have to put into hearing stories. Now, you're still going to be doing more discriminating because you're now going to ask the 3 to come back for a group run-through, Now, you might call it, some people might think of this as a rehearsal, but that can tend to be off-putting, especially for people who don't think of themselves as performers. Okay, so they are performing. You don't have to tell them that. You don't want to get them nervous. This should be Hamish. That's a Jewish term. Who can tell me what Hamish is?
Warm and friendly.
Warm and friendly. There you go. Homey. Sheila, were you going to say something else?
Down to earth.
Down to earth. Perfect. So we're not putting on cable TV here. Actually, cable TV can be homey if it's local, but we're not putting on high-end TV here. All right. So you're still discriminating because you want to go back through your notes of each 40-minute conversation and think about what of those stories, and maybe in 40 minutes they had 5 little bits, shall we call them? You want to pick out a couple of bits. You don't want them talking about their whole 40 minutes. You definitely do not want that. You have to discriminate at this stage. You have to say, I really liked. Okay, so let's go through it. You want to eliminate overlap. I'll come back to that in a minute. But you want to accentuate what's interesting, entertainable, relatable, and you're going to hone it down to 8 minutes. And you want to say to them, your enthusiasm really came through when you said such and such. I loved that you talked about the kids. And remember, don't be the expert. You're not there to be the expert. You're just there to tell what happened for your household. So you're taking pressure off these folks who don't think of themselves as performers, and you are further empowering them to tell their stories that you really already like. You like the 3 bits. You don't have to like all 5 or 6. You like the 3. And you also have noticed, because you've listened to all 3 of them, you've heard overlaps.
Mhm.
So one person has a long speech about how the world needs decarbonization, and that's why they got into it. And the next person has a short speech, and between those two on the same subject, you can pick between the two. You might like one over the other. One because it's shorter, maybe because it's more powerful. But you don't need all 3 people to make a speech about the need for global decarbonization. You do not. You do not. They're not the experts. They're not there to talk about the world. They're there to talk about their own household. All right. I am repeating myself. And that's a good sign for me to move along. Any questions before we're done with this stage? You want to eliminate or at least minimize any overlap. You want to pick the most relatable pieces from each of them and make sure that when you're done, when it's all together, each 8 minutes, you have a complete program. Any questions?
Are we going to get a tape of this so that we aren't relying just on our sketchy little notes here and we can pay
No.
more attention?
That's great. That's great. Yes, there's a tape. There's a tape.
Okay, thank you.
And there will, but I'm also going to be putting in the chat. I'll put it now. So let's see.
Yeah, can you send us a brief rundown of this, the high points on 2 or 3 pages?
So there it is. There are 9, there are actually 8 steps. We're already up to 6.
Mhm.
There it is in the chat. So copy and paste into your own document. I'll stay around after 1 o'clock. So this won't go away before you are done with it, but you don't have to copy it now if you want to stay with the screen. All right. So thanks for bringing that up. And Janet, by the way, who's here on this call, will also be available to follow up with you afterwards. So definitely follow up is important. All right, moving along. Pictures is an important part of any program, whether it's Zoom or in person. But again, you're the discriminating producer. You're the director. So you get to say 2 or 3 pictures per person. 2 or 3 pictures, not more. That's how to make this program really sing. You want this program to come off swimmingly. So 2 to 3 pictures is enough. Now, somebody, and by the way, they might start off saying, I don't have any pictures. That's fine. You say, take your camera, take your cell phone and snap a couple of shots and then send them to me, not Fred, but to you. You want to say this to your speakers, send the pictures to you so that you can review them and you can help say, you know what? These 2 are great. We don't need these other ones. That's sufficient. Again, we're always too close to our own situation. You can help each of your speakers see the big picture or the picture that you want to present. Okay, so narrow it down to 2 to 3 pictures, light on numbers. Somebody amongst your 3 is likely going to be techie, nerdy, numbers oriented, right? And that's not bad. I count as such a person, but it turns out in these kinds of programs, it's a whole different thing. So if somebody wants to, you want to say, you want one person, I suggest one of the 3 have numbers on one of their pictures, one of their slides. And then you you want to be an editor of that. Send me your chart or whatever it is. Let me take a look at it in advance. Of course, you want the fonts to be huge. You want to minimize the amount of data on that. Again, and we can help with all of this. Any questions on that? You want to be discriminating at this stage too? Any questions? Okay, cool. And then, as we said, you want each speaker to speak for about 8 minutes each. And if it's in person, food. Food. Put it in the advertising. Depending on what kind of, you're serving lunch, snacks, whatever. That brings people, if they're wavering whether they're going to attend or not, food. Okay, door prizes if you can do it. If it's virtual, maybe you can make up something for a door prize, even if it's on Zoom. In any case, schmooze. It's a Jewish term, right? What does schmooze mean? Chat. You want to leave a lot of time for organized Q&A and for disorganized, unorganized Q&A. But even in the Q&A, as Janet said, a lot of people will start talking because they've also done it. You still want to keep it non-expert. If somebody starts emerging in the audience, they're the expert. You want to steer it away. You can't really, put a muzzle on them, but you want to keep it mixed up, keep people on the ground level, household level. Talk about their own experiences. Even if they're the expert, you want to say, how are those panels working out for you? Do the kids like the car? Whatever it is, get it on the ground level. All right. So afterwards, assess and advise. Please let us know. Please let us know. We really want to hear. We keep learning. This program that you just went through the training for, and the test is coming up in just a second. But I just want you to know this has been offered for years now. We've been offering this program, and we continue to revise it. I'll say another thing that I said at the beginning. This program, devised by Jewish Climate Action Network over years, honed by us, has already been put to use in synagogues, obviously, churches, communities, meaning municipalities, towns and cities. And it's been done the way I've portrayed it, which is live and in person, whether it's in person or Zoom. It's been done nationally. I'll show you a picture of that in a second. And it's been done also as an online set of videos. So you can go online and check that community's conversations around these questions. So important now, I want to ask, this is the final test. These are your households. They're now giving you feedback on how it went. I'm going to ask people to please read one thought cloud at a time. So if you could everybody take yourself off mute, off mute, and John, and remind us what your community is, and could you read the first bubble there?
Sure. My community's First Church in Boston, Unitarian Universalist. And the first bubble says, did she just say?
Any questions about that first bubble? Okay. Susan, where are you?
Bethlehem Church, Boston. They made money.
Right. Any questions about that? Why would somebody say that? Does somebody have an answer to my question? Why would somebody say they made money? Question mark.
If they have net metering on their rooftop solar, they actually can make money at the end of the year, a little bit. And of course, anybody who drives an EV is saving money.
I'm sorry, I forgot exactly who has solar. Does anybody with solar agree with that?
Have solar.
That answer, that a little bit of money?
Very little bit of money, but I made money.
And where are you, Ellen?
I'm in Gainesville, Florida. And we do have net metering.
Okay. Anybody would differ with a little bit, the characterization of a little bit? Michael, go ahead. You're on mute, though.
So when I calculate the payback period for my solar array, including the rebates that I got, it paid back in 5 years. That means I'm making about a 15% rate of return. And I don't know what savings banks they have down in Florida, but we can't get that high as interest rate on our investments in Massachusetts. So maybe we'll all move down to Florida. It's sunnier down there, so it should pay back even faster. But that's a substantial economic return.
How many, would anybody else agree with Michael's assessment? I do. I made a lot. Ken, where are you?
I'm in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, and we chose the lease program, which is the advantage is there's no upfront cost. The first year before the 11% rate increase in our local utility last January, before that, I was saving better than 20% on the, on my utility bills. It's not, long run, I'm not so sure it's as big an advantage as outright purchase, but the advantage of zero upfront costs may be more attractive to a certain number of people. We chose it.
Okay, cool. All right. And my experience is similar to Michael's, a very, very profitable return on investment. So, all right. And who's next? I'm going to pick on somebody else to go to the very next bubble. A long speech here from who's off mute. Somebody go. Horst, you there? Where are
Yes,
you?
I am.
Where are you, Horst?
I'm from Horton, Michigan,
Okay.
which is up on the South Shore of Lake Superior.
So the third bubble.
Looks easy enough.
All right. I want to hear commentary. Is this possible that somebody could come to this conclusion?
Well, it is possible because when we had a push for solar several years ago, when the local utility was forced by the state to allow 1% of their capacity to be homeowner generated electricity, a number of people did the job. So it was easy in the sense that if you got in and you were able to put the money up front or finance it, you're doing very well these days. So in that sense, it's easy enough.
Nice. Okay, good. Who's next? Let's see. Fran, are you there? Can you take yourself off mute? Urmila? Yeah, great.
So I'm Fran from Lexington, and I'm on the board of Mass Interfaith Power and Light. But I'm on my phone out in the snow, so I can't see the print. So maybe somebody else. But I think what an earlier point that you made was that you choose one person, to speak, but you could have sort of a committee of all the people who said that they endorse whatever. And that way there'd be more people who knew those folks if you were able to get that information out later,
Nice.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice thought. It's a little, obviously this is,
Kristen, hold on a second here.
okay. So Fran, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
So
Urmila,
somebody else for the bubble, please.
Urmila, you were off mute for a second. Okay, go ahead. Where are you?
Hey. Yeah, hi. My name is Urmila Mavadkar, and I'm from Collingswood, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I guess I looked at the last.
Whoops. Wait a minute. Horst, you got to mute.
Monday at 11 o'clock.
Okay. Urmila, I'm sorry, you were saying Collingswood, New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I look at the last bubble, we can too.
Mhm.
And I guess what I was thinking, I'm sorry, I joined a little late. But and I don't know if you covered this, but it seems to me that like it might be helpful. I know that at least in New Jersey, there's a ton of different options. Like someone mentioned that you buy them outright, you lease them, the different options for how you, at least particularly for solar panels. I mean, there's a lot of other different things for decarbonization as well. But if there is, maybe we could come up with, a list of pros and cons. And so people could actually, so we've done it, and then we have all this information sort of in an easy form, so people can just compare rather than having to go and talk to each of the individual people about specific things. But you have it all in one place.
No, I like the thinking. Thank you very much, and I'm glad you spoke up. So, I'll just say a generality here. A reason why we have been pushing this particular program, this particular approach, one is the peer-to-peer. We're beyond that very first phase in general. We're moving beyond that first phase when top-down, in other words, when you have to hear from an expert. Of course, everybody's hearing from experts all the time, and that's all good, by the way. It's all good. But we want to emphasize the peer-to-peer. But we're also moving away from the phase where we can say there are a zillion different ththings you can do to help the environment. There are a zillion different things you can do to help the environment. How many people have heard that many times? So, and it can be, you're 5, you're 10, you're 30. Anyway, those are all good. Those are all good. But there are very few, very impactful steps that are applicable to most single-family detached car driving households. These 3 steps have to happen in large quantities. These 3 measures have to happen in large quantities, accelerating quantities in the next few years. And they are accelerating. They have to accelerate more. So it's always true. There are many, many good things to do to help the environment. It's also true that we, community organizers, climate activists, need to be promoting these 3 measures in large quantity. Okay, sorry to go on about that. So let's see, we skipped the last, the beige colored in the middle there. And I keep calling on people just to make sure there's engagement here. Dean, do you want to take yourself off mute? Tell us where you are.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I represent a community of Beverly, Mass. And the bubble says, ours needs replacing anyway.
All right, what could that possibly mean?
I imagine it's a boiler or a furnace or a car.
Good, good, good. What's the third possibility? And for solar, what would be the analog?
Analog to solar would be
not quite the same, but our roof might need replacing, which makes it an excellent, if it's a good prospect, an excellent time to also go solar. Or our roof might need replacing in the next couple of years. So great. And Dean, looking to you to see if you might be interested in doing this in your community of Beverly. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to talk further. I think there's some interesting parallels with what we're doing here.
Cool. And as I said, this program has been run in municipalities with the same results. By the way, that's what we're doing here. We're going through the results. These are the proven results of having these programs. Now, somebody might logically ask, well, Fred, have you measured? Have you counted how many people went PV? And, so far we don't have it down to a science, but anecdotally, we definitely hear, you heard Maria say, and sorry, we didn't get back to Donnie, who's the other testimonial who's done this recently. Anyway, in all cases, we hear anecdotes like this, and furthermore, that they did go ahead. And then let's see, who didn't speak up yet?
Sure, if they could do it,
keep going.
We can too.
All right, can you imagine that working in your community, which tell everybody is?
No, absolutely. A lot of people are not all that informed. They're nervous about making the transformation, particularly there's a lot of older buildings, let's say from the 1800s, early 1900s, and people are concerned, can they put in a heat pump? How would they have to modify the walls, the ceilings, and so on? So there are options, and people need to be informed about it.
Cool. I'm so glad you brought that up. It is a commonality, and it's why we do this. People are anxious, and guess what? It's because we're, what do you call it? Human. Change doesn't come, easily. We're anxious, we're concerned, and that's why this kind of response is what we really want people to see. Hey, our house looks just the same. They live down the street. That if they can do it, what? Okay, so you got the idea. I'm going to show you just the last slides here. So, as I said, at one point we did this nationally at our conference a couple of years ago. So Elisa here spoke about her car, and included this great photo. Can everybody see who's in the driver's seat there? All right. All right. As I said, this is the final test. You've all done really well on the test. And that was the most important question there. Could you see the dog in the car? Okay. Got it. So does that make it engaging? Certainly does. Does it convince somebody to go EV? It convinces somebody to keep listening to Elisa. Mark, want to talk about PV on his house. And he had the slides to show the installation and the finished. He was the one with the numbers. And what just happened to our brains? We were all watching this screen, Fred yammering away here, watching the screen, listening to Fred. And then there's these numbers. Take it from me, the numbers are great, but your brain can't go there. You can't make that switch like that. If you go to a technical presentation, your mind can get into the groove and stay there, and that's good, but it's not peer-to-peer. Okay, anyway, you get the point. You want to minimize this kind of thing, but it's good, but you got to minimize it. Okay. And Irene, and by the way, these folks were all over. So Marietta, Georgia, and Elisa was in, where was she? In Narberth, Pennsylvania, and Irene here in Wayland, Massachusetts. Here, I'm in Massachusetts also. So Irene was the heat pump person and had these super sexy photos here. Right? And if this isn't exciting, what is? Look at that picture. All right, you get the point. And this was the original Decarbonizers program. It's all guys because it was a brotherhood event at a synagogue. And this guy up here, if you can see my cursor, this guy, Harvey, talked about his solar. And Harvey had just celebrated his 90th birthday, and everybody in the congregation knew it. Everybody loved Harvey, but hardly anybody knew he had put solar on his roof. And if he could do it, so could anybody. Okay, well, thanks for listening, everybody. Please jot down our email. I really appreciate it. I will hang on here for as long as you want. Any last questions? And I know some people didn't participate. I know some people where you're coming from, and I'd love to hear any feedback, any thoughts.
Good job, Fred.
Well, there are a couple things in the chat. I don't know if you noticed it.
Thanks.
As we're talking, because someone asked, should we search out people that have used the IRA rebates? And Ellen Siegel wrote, now I have to find it again. She wrote that she has a short, Fran Ludwig wrote, should we search out people who benefit from IRA rebates? And Ellen Siegel wrote, she has a short IRA slideshow to share widely, used already in my congregation at a climate fair and in Rotary meetings. And then she has Woodstock Wisdom at att.net if you want the slides, or I will
Ellen,
do it on Zoom for your group.
Ellen, you still on?
I am.
Can you send them to me? I really would like to look at them. That'd be great.
Absolutely will. It's personalized right now for Berkeley, California Rotary Club, because there's slides you can redo, and I'm happy to, because I'm Climate Reality Project presentation co-chair, I have an obligation to do a bunch of presentations. So if you have you just want to put together a few people, or you want a private showing of it, I can do it in 15 minutes.
Well, thanks. So listen, the JCAN put on a great an IRA, a program about IRA, and that was now 13 months ago.
Beginning, you did it. Good.
And we are considering another program, and we're having a subcommittee meeting of our board to consider that, and that meeting is tomorrow night. If we don't have
a slideshow, Fred.
So if I could take a look at it before, that'd be great.
Absolutely, will do. I also wanted to make a comment. We're a little bit ahead of this decarbonizing workshop. I'm thrilled to have gone here because sometimes when you go to a program, you learn a lot, and sometimes you go to a program and you go, okay, I got a snippet, but we're already on it. So in Gainesville, of all places, we're already on it, and we've connected with our equivalent of the Federation, which has access to the not even a half a dozen other congregations in North Central Florida. And we're already talking about doing a salon with a panel of local people. So it's like really good to see this program, Fred, and see, okay, we kind of created it ourselves without having your leadership, and we're following your we're following your scripts.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's
Good.
that's very cool.
I'm glad you're mentioning this because I want to, and for those who are still here, I appreciate if you could hear this. So there are communities where this has already run multiple times. And I would recommend, once you've done it once, put it on the schedule for at most 1 year later. 6 months would be even better. Why is Fred saying that? And you're not in the test mode anymore. You've all passed. But anybody want to put out a thought as to why Fred is saying do it again in 6 months or 12 months?
Repetition
Why though?
will move along, and
Because-
things will get worse with the weather, and people will want to do something.
Susan, why? You have a thought?
There'll be people who didn't make the first one, but who heard something about it and are really eager to get the information.
Exactly. And guess what we're doing here? You know, I talked about adoption curves. They're mostly used by business to talk about the adoption of their own products. And I'm sorry, but that is what we're talking about here. It's a similar thing. It's adoption of a technology, not a specific product, but the same concept. And we are, unfortunately, we don't have anything other than this in the universe that most of us work in. We are salespeople. Unfortunately, these things have to be purchased, all three of them, and individuals have to make up their minds. It's tough, but that's the way it is. So I'm sorry, just one more thing about that. So you're right, Susan, the repetition will bring in other people, but we need to think of it as continued waves. We're moving up that curve. So what happens over let's say 3 years, you will find different people, different kinds of people coming in with a different orientation. At the beginning, it was weird and different, scary-er, and then more people hear about it. And then if you do it 3 years, it's people have been in homes that have heat pumps. People have driven on electric cars. They just haven't done it yet. And by the way, the second and third presenters should be different and should be of that next generation. So it is hopefully a very quick moving generational change thing. And we'll all come back by 2029 and declare victory. Ellen.
You said something that I want to underscore. My first Zoom this morning was the Yale Climate Communications program on the latest research on how to move the needle, how to message better. And you touched on it, Fred. There are two things that were the takeaway from the program that I share. The strongest message that resonated with over 60,000 people in 23 countries, the primary motivation was not jobs, was not clean energy, was not any of the things you would think. It was love for the next generation. That was the strongest value. And they encourage us to, in all of our programs, build in protecting this for our kids. And the second message was, and this is urgent. So I share that because that could be built into our advertising scripts for the programs we're all doing. This is for the children. And that actually is one of the points of the Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition, which I'm sure every congregation here is already a member of. You're looking, Susan, like that's not true. A Jewish Climate Leadership Coalition, you sign a pledge that your congregation will do a climate action plan and turn it in by Tu B'Shvat. So in any case, it's for the next generation and it is urgent. And those are the takeaways. And that should be the script through everything we do is their message. Thank you.
Right. So just to reiterate, not everybody would know this, but this particular iteration of this program training, there are people here who represent synagogues, who represent churches, and who represent communities, meaning towns and cities, and other groupings. And it's all good. And I'm interested in anybody who wants to speak up with any feedback on applicability to their own community. Any thoughts while you're still here? Again, we went through the whole arc of empowerment, asking permission at the outset. That is a huge stumbling block for most people. So anybody wants to say anything about that, how to get this started? Is there's good discussions, I'm sure, to have. And then anybody who's ready to go, any thoughts? And Janet is here to follow up with all of you. You'll be getting emails from Janet asking, are you ready to go? Any questions? So Fred's asking them now, while you're still here. And Ed, you haven't said anything. Do you want to speak up? Good to see you, Ed. And Bill and Janet Bowser, if either of you want to speak up.
Yeah, this is Janet Bowser. I live in Dover. I'm a member of the Dover Church, so this is something I would like to try to bring to our congregation. And this is all great. It's very straightforward. And the sense of humor, you cannot underestimate that. So thank you, Fred.
Well, you're welcome. Okay. Anybody else have any good jokes? Bill, you still there? Bill, that's Ed, you're there. Okay. You want to speak up, Ed?
Yes, we sort of tried to do a program and we couldn't quite pull it off, but we'll try again.
Try again. It sounds great. What do you think you need to do different?
I don't know. We were up at the end. We were at the end of the sort of the spring season, and people just didn't want to come. I think if we had a better time, and it would have worked.
So tell folks what your congregation is.
Bethel, Elohim, and Wellesley.
And here's a key question for the audience. I'm asking Ed. Ed, does your synagogue have a lot of programming?
Yes, huge amount.
Huge amount, right? How many people have that problem in their, or that situation in their congregation? Yes? Yes, interesting. And other congregations have the opposite, not much going on. But interesting. So it's a challenge, not necessarily for the content as the competition, right? Is
right.
that?
Right.
And would you say, Ed, again, just for in your synagogue, would you imagine there's a significant percentage of people who've done at least one of these measures?
Probably. They're a little harder to identify than some places. We have a very big congregation.
You have a very big congregation. So I wonder if you started off on the organizing and just worked to establish the pool, or just make it. Just say you could say in your case you could just say you're doing a survey. Don't you have to call?
Well, we found people. That wasn't so much a problem. I wasn't involved particularly, but it just when we got to it, nobody wanted to come.
No, right. But I'm saying maybe tweak the tools here and say, since it's such a large congregation, let's say there are 100 people, 50 people even who have decarbonized one way or the other. You don't have to tell them they're being considered for this to be speakers, but you can say we're doing a survey and we hope you come and bring everybody you know, or bring people who've talked to you about solar on their, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And those 50, then you're leveraging those 50 to be your further marketing.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, well, good luck. Good luck, and keep me informed. Harry, you got thoughts about your next steps?
Yeah, so it turns out Ed and I are in the same green team, and we're having our meeting after tomorrow. So this has certainly created or presented a lot of material for us to discuss. And if indeed it didn't work out earlier, we'll try to understand why and what we can do to make it happen this time around.
Cool. Okay, Ellen, Dean, Sheila, Ermila, John, thoughts about what you might be able to do in your communities?
Well, at First Church in Boston, which is Unitarian, we have a very active social justice committee. And I want to go to those people and suggest that we plan a presentation and network and get other people involved. I think I know who to talk to.
Cool. Who wants to speak up next? Ellen?
Yeah, I'm just going to share that we're now part of a good national model as I move forward Thursday with the planning meeting for our salon. And we did talk about putting in food. We know that if you feed them, they will come.
Good, good, good. And by the way, we hope we didn't pile on here, those of us in the northern climes, you know, making you jealous of how lucrative solar is up here.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Which, you know, I should have said earlier, JCAN has 3 arms. This decarbonizing stuff is one, another one is spiritual, and the third is even more active than the other 2, which is our advocacy arm. So, and you've got good advocates in Florida, I know, but steeper hills let's talk about steeper hills. Steeper hill to climb in Florida than we've made great strides here in Massachusetts, and Florida has a ways to go. Did I say politically? Yeah. So in terms of advocacy, and so just what we're talking about, solar, you know, solar should be super profitable in a sunny state. All right, Dean.
Yeah, Fred, one thing I want to bring up, so I wear a couple different hats. One of them is I'm involved in a local grassroots organization for our community called Green Beverly. And we've engaged with a couple churches in town, not the synagogue yet, so I need to figure out how to engage with the synagogue. But one thing, and we're 2.5 years old. We're a 501c3, 2.5 years old. And one of the things that we're trying to do this year is reach broader into the community. And one of the strategies that we're taking is to integrate within different social and or religious organizations, right? So one thing, and it's kind of become a joke internally, but I think it's got some real validity, is that you could take this kind of a model beyond a synagogue or beyond a church, and I know you've mentioned community many times, but there are so many other social groups within a community. And the internal joke we have is the running groups. We have like 4 different running groups in our town. Each micro pub has its own running group of 50 people. And I don't know if it's the age group or it's their whatever, they're very interested in sustainability. They're very interested in what we're doing in Green Beverly. And so my whole point is, I think you can take this kind of a model beyond a synagogue and a church and apply it to almost any kind of a social group.
Absolutely.
That's my point.
Community is community. Absolutely right. I agree. So if you want to, this is, to the extent anybody's followed the training, you can take it as is to a municipality. It's been done already, and Beverly could work. It could work wonderfully, and it's all incremental. You know, you don't need the entire town to show up. You don't need the entire congregation to show up, whatever your congregation is. As a matter of fact, you can't. And all you need is the right prospective folks to show up, prospectively. So, and Dean, I want to say one other thing. So there's one town that I know of right now, and guess what? Wellesley, that is trying to put together the consortium of congregations there. And so Mass Interfaith Power and Light, Bill with Mass Interfaith Power and Light, and Fran, they both were with Mass. Anyway, they signed off, but they do that kind of work all the time. But in Wellesley, it's a somewhat different or specific thing. They're trying to get the house of worship on the same page, and you know, just like everything else, it may not be everybody all at once. It's an organizing challenge, but it's a good one. It's a good one.
Yep.
So, but and also, just like everything else, it needs a champion. So don't spread yourself too thin. If there's a house of worship that you think is ready to go, have them attend the training. If it's your house of worship, you're already set.
Excellent. Nice work, Fred. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and go forth and decarbonize and get other people to do so.